going to have that conversation that everybody wants to have. The fantastically simple, if only we do beneficiation, all the problems of the country will go away. It should be fun, huh? It should be fun. Yeah, we've got...
I'm getting worried. That's because you live in Australia.
Claude is going to talk to us about the thing he's got for Australians.
Exactly.
You know, I don't know what we've got, an economist, a consultant, and an analyst, or whatever they call themselves. So it should be fun. Please send me your questions. I'm going to need help with this audience. The most help I'm going to need is to control them. When we had a pre-conversation, we took about 2 hours to prepare for a 25-minute conversation. Because as you can imagine, neither Claude nor Roger would shut up. So wish me luck. But gentlemen, this is actually a topic that is truly close to my heart. I mean, this is something that I wake up and I think, yeah, we must do this. As a country, we just cannot not do beneficiation. Then I wake up and I go to my beneficiation business and I think this is stupid. We have no chance in this country to do beneficiation. So I'm confused. But I don't know, yes, I'm scared to start this conversation because you're never going to shut up. But I'm going to rudely keep you to the time because I actually want to strongly involve the audience through proper questions as well. I want to talk about beneficiation or value adding in the broadest possible context. Just give me your take on what does value adding mean, all the way from wherever you want to go to beneficiation. Let me start with you, because I'm afraid this may be the last chance you get to speak.
I get to speak, yeah.
Yeah, so,
yeah, so I think the classical definition, Bernard, is one that we've been pushing for a long time, which is the value add beyond mining and extraction into usable products that we can export or base products that can be used for other manufacturing. But I'd like to broaden that definition to thinking through the inbound value chain for mining. So all the activities that we think about, including the supplier base, the manufacturers that support the mining industry, are also a value add in the broader economic sense.
So can I understand, make sure I understand. So when I talk to Mpumi after this, she's got this little quarry there in the Northern Cape. She exports everything, if I'm not mistaken, almost everything. Perhaps a little bit gets sold locally. You're talking about, but that mine can create lots of value in the country through the other activities, through the procurement, through the... I'm just I'm making sure I understand what you're talking about.
100% correct. But to not think about it in a very siloed way by one mine or one mining company, but to rather think about it in a broader sense of what is the supply base for the mining industry and how do we look at it from a manufacturing and value add perspective.
Were you here when I tried to get the 3 platinum guys to talk about collaboration? Did you sense that I was on fertile ground of being told to stuff off?
It's even more complex than that, Bernard, because I think it's beyond mining as well that we need to think about. Even the energy cluster and the mining cluster together.
So give me your... I don't know why they fly suddenly, Claude. I mean, it's just a hygiene thing.
I showered last week.
So give me a sort of like a dream scenario. So talk me through how would this work. Give me an example. So can we go to Witbank?
Well, South Africa is no stranger to this kind of thinking, right? I think if we go back to where our industrial sort of revolution started in this country with the mining, with gold, actually, we created many mining towns surrounded by a lot of industrial development and manufacturing to support that, giving rise to the steel industry, Eskom, many of the other elements we're having within our economy today. But what I will say is that we've done a lot of studies around the world in looking at this concept of how do you really use that supply base and demand pooling to create industry? Interestingly enough, some more countries in the Middle East who are less mature in mining have been quite successful in increasing local content from about 35% to closer to 70% over 9 years.
In the mining space?
In the
or
mining
in
space,
the
mining and
economy?
oil and gas. Mining and oil and gas, so a combination of both. And it's interesting that those very countries would look at South Africa and go, South Africa is the prime example of a strong mining economy with an industrial base that was built around it. Today, I think we can look at other countries who are in a less mature space, but probably are now pioneering the industrialization using their supplier base. And we've seen this happen around the world. So I think we used to have that muscle in South Africa. We've lost it from a competitiveness point of view, a cost perspective, reliability of power, infrastructure. Those have eroded our competitiveness in manufacturing. So we're not enabled. But I think we have the supplier base, certainly, to reopen that conversation around what can we do around industrialization.
I'm not going to allow us to sit here and only bash the government, but we should do a little bit of that just because it's the national sport. But I don't hear the Minister Mantasse's department talking about this. I hear him talk about beneficiation. I don't hear the DTIC talk about this. So is this off the national agenda? Is this ideologically incompatible with what we want? What's your take on that?
My take on it, Bernard, is that there's probably a conversation that is not happening between the DTIC and the Department of Mineral Resources. More coordination, let's say, on this topic, because I think there is an intent for industrialization and localization from the DTIC. I think that's very, very clear. But I'm not sure the industry and the DTIC are having the right conversation. So I would say we probably need more collaboration and cohesion in government if we want to drive this topic. But also, it's not up to government.
I was going to go exactly there. Yeah. But even if government is dysfunctional, what is it that we can do?
Exactly. So the industry, I think, has to
that's
be
the we I'm
center.
talking about. Yeah.
And I don't think there's any answer that is the right answer without it being built on a sound commercial business case for the industry.
You mean this, this BE procurement crap should actually make financial sense? Where are you from? What are you smoking? Isn't this a cost of doing business? So you believe we should build this on business principles?
Yes, not just compliance, because I think the agenda has been driven predominantly by compliance requirements. I think we need to think about it more from a commercial requirement. Otherwise, we won't be successful. We have to compete in a global market. That's not going to change.
Claude.
Oops.
I don't know what fell out. My hearing aid, my speaker. I've got so many things in my ear. Now I'm going to have your voice in my ear. That's even worse.
Not too lucky.
Claude, so let's talk about somewhere online, social media, you and I seem to always disagree. At some stage, I thought you are just totally against beneficiation. So, are you?
No, I'm not at all.
And you're going to have only 3 minutes to argue with me, so make your point.
So did you bring your sleeping bags and all that? No, I mean, resoundly in favor of beneficiation because it makes sense, right? I mean, mining mines assets that are non-renewable that get depleted, okay? So we all know that. That's 101 economics. And so it makes sense to add as much value to that particular commodity as we can. But there are many, so that's the logic. And so I'd love to see what South Africa had. As you said, it was one of the rare countries that managed to industrialize, late industrialization, industrialize on the back of its mining industry. And very few countries managed to do that and be competitive. The question we're not asking is, why did we lose it? And so I fundamentally disagree with you, here we go, about the fact that it's about coordination and policy.
The first time. It's not bullshit, it's just the first time you disagree. So.
That's cool, man.
Carry
on. Can I have that?
No. Thanks for asking. Carry on.
Yeah. So
I disrupted him. You
It's
totally
not a policy.
disagree with
It's not a
Prashaen.
policy coordination issue. It's not a policy planning issue. It's just the wrong policy in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know,
So beneficiation is the wrong policy for today in South Africa.
it
that
is the
what
wrong
you're saying?
policy for today in South Africa. We need to get back to basics. Think about this, and it kind of hit me when I was preparing for this. I have notes, first time ever. Any country that doesn't mine can beneficiate. Put the stuff on ships, send it there. No country that doesn't have mine can mine. What does that tell you? It tells you that to beneficiate, you need two things. You need the natural endowment, and you need other factors that allow you to add value. We know that. Water, electricity, skilled labor, infrastructure, policy environment, and not a million requirements on mining that adds to the cost of mining. 20, 30, 40 years ago, protectionism worked. You could protect your domestic market, your industry, because the global economy was a lot smaller, and you didn't have juggernauts like China and India who can wipe out Germany's automotive industry in 2 years. What chance do we have at South Africa, not having the market, not having the electricity, not having the skills, not having the water, not having the infrastructure, not having a government that can deliver a cadastre over 10 years, for crying out loud? So let's just focus on getting the basics right. I have never seen an industry in any country in the world succeed when its market size has been reduced by export taxes to force localization. How do you create competitiveness by destroying the cost advantage and the volume advantage that you have by imposing restrictions on your business ability to generate volumes and profit and returns? In the world of a mad ideologue, does that work? But in South Africa, we have 20 years of policy failure. Selo, are you hearing what I'm saying? Advisor to the Minister of Mines. I told him I was going to say things that would offend him. But the thing is, we have those conversations, you know, we have them, the Minerals Council have had those conversations, the mining. The mining industry keeps going to the minister saying, you're talking to the wrong people. Bernard, you have those conversations with them. So if you want to beneficiate, find people who are going to beneficiate. Oh, ArcelorMittal, they beneficiate. Oh, they can't do it without subsidies. So let's take away the scarce tax income we have in South Africa. Let's apply it to industries that have zero competitive advantage without subsidies and tax breaks and export protection and import protection.
I don't want
What
you
are we
to,
talking about?
I don't want you to rant and rave all of your points yet. I want to come back because I can see you need a break. So,
that's point number 2, page number 2.
So, Claude, so when I say to Minister Mantas in a public debate in Cape Town that you cannot bully mining companies into beneficiation, do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
When you say here to us, to this audience, don't waste the country's money on subsidizing the ferrochrome smelters, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't like this guy. Who invited him?
Yeah, press the button there.
I don't like the guy. Roger Baxter, I mean, you're an economist. I'm sorry. Claude made me do that. I mean, let's start with the concept. Which part of this value-adding concept makes sense, ideologically and in the South African context?
So Bernard, let me start off by saying, I sometimes wonder what paradigm and conversation I'm really in, to be frank. So Frank Baxter, you know, the picture that you gave me from one of the Indabas. Let me start off by saying, I'm amazed we get into conversations about beneficiation as if everyone's got a universally accepted view of what beneficiation is. So let me give you a little starting description by saying South Africa produces 80% of its own steel. Maybe it won't last that long, but at the moment it does, about 80% of its steel. About 95% of South Africa's cement is produced locally. 50% of our chemical feedstocks plastics, polymers, 30% of our liquid fuels, and I can go on, including 10% of the world's platinum catalytic converters are fabricated right here in South Africa using South African mined minerals. So I kind of like ask myself, this continued concept that we are dirt diggers and we export the basic dirt is nonsense. Even in that very large iron ore mine that you call a little pit, they add value by taking an ore which is basically mined at 58, 56% Fe content, and they take it up to 63, 67% content, where they add a significant amount of value through concentrating at that particular level. I'll just use that as an example. So that's a bit about the downstream stuff. There are as many people employed in the upstream side and the sidestream side. The upstream side are the businesses that supply inputs into mining, and the sidestream side is all the lawyers that have to make the money defending the industry. I'm just pretending.
Are we calling them the side stream now? I like that.
No, but I think it's important to state that if you look at a place like a Ekurhuleni is a mining supplier park. If you look at one of South Africa's biggest exports over the last 10 years has actually been mining supplier and services technologies to the rest of Africa. Because the industry hasn't grown domestically, a lot of the local companies at the mining supplier level and the skills level have exported their skills into the African continent and around the world. There's not a single part where mining is taking place globally, whether it's Latin America, North America, Australia, Africa, where South Africans are not involved in some way or another. So I think we mustn't underestimate that capability. Then you've got all the other institutions which have been established around mining, the universities, Mintech, the CSIR, and others who all had their foundation in mining, are entities that actually do contribute significantly. So I want everyone to just take a step back and say, when you talk about this beneficiation concept, it all comes around the sector of mining, which provided the critical mass for these sectors to actually start and to supply many different parts of the economy. And it was the rest of the economy, including financial services, that was originally started off the back of the mining sector, including the JSE, including a number of banks we can talk about, that enabled this value addition to take place. And mining became a smaller part, and South Africa took that natural transition up the value curve over time.
Mr. Baxter, yes, but you're talking about the past. I mean, you and Gwede can have a lovely conversation about the past.
Yes.
That is true. I think that's common cause. Yes. Let's talk about the future. Just step it into the future.
So I think the important part to just reflect on here for a moment is that it's important when one talks about an industry like mining, if we had a growing mining industry, all those other components that add value would all be growing too,
yes,
based on the basis of the mining sector. And I think the discussions with the minister and his team is very much about how you unlock the ability to improve the exploration pipeline, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Bernard, it's really important to state that getting the basics right, not using Claude's terminology, using my terminology around just getting the framework right, which encourages massive boost in exploration, allowing mining to really progress, will help add all those bits of value. Now, when we get into a downstream value conversation, you cannot force comparative advantage in minerals into competitive advantage. Having minerals doesn't endow you with competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is something that you as a country create. It's not something that you inherit and you can force down someone's throat. It's what I use, the terminology is comparative advantage determines who mines what and whether you grow wheat or not and if you're good at it. Whereas competitive advantage decides whether you are a major manufacturing base. And the countries around the world, like South Korea and others, they mine nothing. They are significant manufacturing bases because they've developed the created the competitive advantage itself. So does South Africa not have competitive advantage? It does in certain industries. But what we need to do is, instead of trying to preserve this or preserve that, rather have the conversation about how you unlock the potential to have those downstream industries through creating real competitive advantage. And you do that not by restricting or imposing, and the lessons in South Africa are clear. Diamonds is a case in point. Export taxes have been applied, state diamond traders set up, et cetera, et cetera. Those have done nothing to improve the competitiveness of the diamond cutting and polishing industry, which is basically non-existent today.
Yeah.
What we should have been focusing on is putting in place special economic zones, zero VAT-free, duty-free, focused on the skills base, etc. And I'm just talking about that industry. So I think the conversation needs to pivot towards a conversation about competitiveness at a manufacturing level and what we can do from a country level perspective, as opposed to putting pressure on mining companies to go down that route. Last point, Bernard, from my side, and then you can ask the questions to everyone else. I just want to say to everyone here, just think about an industry like platinum group metals. We have the world's biggest refining and smelting industry here in good old RSA. There are a couple of other countries that have potential large-scale PGM projects. The biggest disadvantage that they have is that they don't have a smelting and refining industry. So it's actually a hell of a benefit, to be in South Africa, as much as there are some juniors, apparently it's not us, but there are some juniors complaining about access to ore of concept, ore concentrate or offtake arrangements into smelters and refineries. The point I just want to make is, that's a hell of a big industry. We don't export any unbeneficiated PGMs. We export 395 PGMs, 99.95%, and we also export good delivery, and we also export a huge amount of catalytic converters to the rest of the world. That, in my view, is value addition.
Claude, I want to come back to you on this. So ideologically, are we talking to a government who actually thinks that the levers that we should pull to create economic growth, are we even talking to people who think about economic growth the way you think about it?
It's a great question, because I think we're not. I think we have a fundamental. I think we have a fundamental incompatibility of concepts and understanding about economics.
And I want to ask you up front. And why do you think your view is right?
Because the evidence of the past 20 years show that their view is wrong.
Yeah, no, so their view is wrong. That doesn't make you right yet. So let's bank that. So they're wrong. But you've got strong views, and why would that be right? On what basis is your views, other than it's alternative to the government?
Well, because I'm very happy to throw away my data if it's proven wrong. And I'm not married to a particular theory of economic growth, or I'm not married to a particularly set of experiences. I would love South Africa to succeed. I'd love to have the ANC have succeeded in what they started doing. I think under Mbeki we had the kind of right mix. This is an economy that needed significant state intervention to correct a number of issues, social, economic, infrastructure, spatial, and all that. So it's not about hitting on government policy and I'm a social democrat. I absolutely believe in the fact that the state needs to intervene to correct inequalities and the like. It's just that this government has done it very badly in the past 10 years. And unfortunately, when you have those conversations, I don't think that there's no meeting of the minds. You are going to debate ad vitam aeternam ad nauseam about facts and what works and doesn't work. And in the end, the minister will throw his hand up and says, in any case, I'm a communist, I'll always be a communist, that's what I believe in. So you say, well, I'm very pleased I got you there, because we could have started there, because I know where you are, I know you know where you are, you know where I am, and let's just cut the crap out, and let's cut that, because instead of pretending that we are going to come to those agreements, we should rather say we will never agree on these things. Let's stop playing hide and seek with ideology and policy. Let's rather focus on the fundamental problems we're trying to fix. And lo and behold, where is public-private sector cooperation working right now? It's working on the infrastructure that has collapsed, right? Which tells us that in South Africa, from a political incentive standpoint, there is a bottom line to what society and government and ruling party are willing to tolerate. Unfortunately, it's a very low base, and it gets us to 1% growth per annum, which is not enough. But can we not take those examples and say, right, that's worked. What is the next national emergency? Unemployment, right? So instead of talking about beneficiating now, in the next 5 years or 20 years, or let's just say not 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, can we not address the unemployment crisis? And can we say the purpose of mining is to generate disproportionate amount of income for the country, Reserve Bank. It's the greatest generator of foreign reserves, okay? About 50% of our foreign currency earnings is mining, and about 30% of corporate income tax is mining. So what I would call beneficiation, it's an absolute perversion of the word, right? Is I would call beneficiation the recycling of the mineral rent into industries that have a potential competitive advantage and that create jobs for South Africans who need them.
Okay, but let's go there. Because as I said, it's fun to bash the government. A few of them are here, and we'll certainly do that to the minister tomorrow. But let's talk to the people who are mostly in this audience. What is it that private sector can be doing? What is it that mining companies can be doing? What is it that the mining industry can be doing? Can I start with you?
Yeah. And I think to Roger's point, you know, comparative versus competitive advantage. If we accept that we are not competitive on the downstream value chain on a number of industries that we could invest in, then how do we solve the problem? Because we could also accept that, which I think we should in some cases, and we should really play to our advantages where we have those advantages. And to Roger's point, there are still some advantages. But if the point is we want to grow the mining sector, we see the potential in the mining sector, that means we will definitely grow the demand for everything that goes into the mining sector. And if we're going to do that, then I go back to the point is that we've got to look upstream to understand what opportunities, not every opportunity, by the way, not every opportunity, by the way, will make sense. But I don't think we've done that work. I don't think we've taken South Africa Inc., mining, energy, looked at the full procurement and supply base and understood what is our greatest opportunity and advantage, in which categories could we produce here in South Africa, not just for our economy, but probably for the rest of Africa. Again, to Roger's point, we're not just talking about South Africa, we have the potential to supply into the rest of the continent. And I think the mining sector can take control of that. If we have the mechanism, platform, to have that conversation, which I know is where we are stuck at the moment. And we might not need government necessarily to have that conversation. We might need to at some point.
Yeah.
But to start that, I don't think it's necessary.
Roger, you're going to be surprised that I give you another chance to speak after your long monologue of earlier.
It was the shortest of all of us.
But, so I hear, perhaps our first focus should be let's grow the mining industry. A growing mining industry will contribute to a growing economy, will create jobs, etc., etc. So I'm signing up for that. Let's grow the mining industry. But what else could we do? So let's change the narrative to we can grow. We can make the mining industry even more relevant. What else is it that we as the mining industry could be doing without blaming government or waiting for them, even worse?
So Bernard, I've always had the attitude, and it's one that we adopted in my previous role, and one that we still subscribe to 1,000%, which is be the change that you want to see in the world. We never went into any conversation with government without having a challenge and a solution on each of the issues. And I was able to play a role back then in the establishment of NECOM, the NLCSC, and some of the security structures. And the reason for that was we had learnt as industry and government that we needed each other after COVID. COVID was a very good thing to happen.
Can I just ask, are those then part of what Claude calls the failures of the last 20 years?
They might well be.
I'm not being critical, but it hasn't delivered economic growth.
No, but those were particularly used to stabilize particular situations after crisis points had been reached. So that's a particular one point. But then, if I just think about the geological prospectivity of this country, I mean, only 20% of South Africa has been mapped at a high-level geophysical level, and if that pre-competitive information was done to 80% of the country, and you were able to give much shorter timelines to allow the venture capital-funded junior exploration companies to come and invest in the country, it would be a massive boost from a pipeline point of view.
I agree, but you're blaming government.
No, I'm not blaming government. I'm saying that's part of the solution. So as Southern Palladium, we've spent 200 million rand over the last 3 years on proving up a 40 million ounce resource. We are in the DFS level stage now where we have a project which will employ 5,900 people. It will probably create jobs for another 3,000 people. So let's call it around 9,000 youngsters that will have an opportunity to work in an industry in an impoverished area. The capital investment that will go into it in the initial phases will be about 5 billion, so that's a very significant investment. But what's been the most interesting part in our project execution and operational readiness planning has been our thinking about how our community, who are our partners in the business, the Bengwenyama Swazi traditional community, is how we can make sure that they are playing an active role in the project at every stage of the project, from a supplier-based perspective, from youngsters coming through. We've got lots of the mining of our people from the area who are working in surrounding mines who are going to come back and work in the project. But what we're doing now is how can we prepare the community for participating, but at an employment level, at a supplier level, going forward. So, when you think about how that can change people's lives, this is one of the reasons why I got involved in this particular project. Bernard, you know that I had 8 different offers after I stepped down from the Minerals Council. I only took 2. This was one, and I took it because I only wanted to get involved in a project that was going to make a big impact for the country, and to have a legacy impact on a community. So what can we do? We can involve the community in much more than just the rats and mice stuff. It's involving the community right through all aspects of the value chain where we can, and just to be practical about it. And it goes back to then working with the mines in the area who have already done a lot of work on skilling employees. There's an artisan training center in the valley. It's called the Valley Training Center, for example. Participating in those sort of structures and getting more people through those types of systems, that changes people's lives. In my view, that's real value addition.
No. And obviously, as a startup, you are very open to tapping into the other people's capacity, collaborating. I thought earlier we found it very hard to talk about collaboration between the big guys. It seems to get harder as you get bigger.
But that was because you wouldn't allow a junior, an aspirant junior, to sit on the panel. It was just all the seniors.
I know.
It was a bit of an unfair conversation. You didn't get the different perspective.
Once you get to your first 1 million ounces, come talk to me, okay? Until then, just sit on the panel I invite you to. Claude, I want to come back to you. These are my friends. You won't think it, but geez. Claude, I want to come back to you with this question. Just framed the way the audience member framed it, because it's the same question. What few things should the industry consider to enable the increase in value add?
I think outside of mining. I mean, I like your example, but we're trying to squeeze too many dollars out of mining, right? That's the problem. It has to pay for everything. Industrialization, electricity, infrastructure, communities, empowerment, taxes. This is what is called the resource curse, right? The resource curse is trying to extract more value out of a natural resource you have, whether it's oil and gas or minerals, than inherently it can produce and that it can return, right? Profits for everybody. Mining is never going to solve all our problems. What it does is that it creates the infrastructure in places that would not have infrastructure. It creates technical jobs in places that would not have technical jobs. It creates a middle class in places that would not have middle class. But it does not carry in itself enough economic generating wealth to carry a country for 30, 40, 50 years. And to believe so is a fundamental lack of imagination. So what I would like to see at the mining industry is I'd like the mining industry to be far more involved in the conversation about what part of the economy can we grow where. We have an incredible climate, right? We could produce, as Paul said this morning, a lot more electricity, right, through a deregulated framework, with microgrid at the level of communities, which could enable the pumping of water, for instance, right? If we were a lot more creative, where the mining industry served as a catalyst with other industries about what else can we do, agricultural potential. You know that South Africa, nobody talks about it, has about 200,000 jobs in the back office functions, call center function. about half of what the mining industry employs. Because we are in the right place in the world, we have multilingual, English, very friendly population. We could do a lot more with what we have. And for me, development has to be people-centric. And it has to create a future for the people. We have to shift. Mining has to get off that monkey off its back, right? To say, stop talking to us about beneficiation and local value addition. Yeah, you build a lot of mines, and yeah, you'll buy some of that stuff in South Africa, but chances are disproportionately you'll buy it from overseas, and that's okay. What can we do? Something else. What is it? I don't know, let's talk.
Yeah, you talk like a Minister of Economic Affairs. I don't care about call centers. I want a mine. So just get this monkey of call centers off my back. Take it there to the other part of the country. I want to come back to, this is an audience question. How do you balance society's expectations against competing selfish interests of the mining industry? I promise you that's what the question says.
It's a good question.
But competing selfish interests sounds to me like perfectly capitalist in nature. Self-interest is let's make money. But can it, I mean, where's the overlap? I mean, this is perhaps a slightly negatively framed question, but I don't know.
The question is, can you do one without the other? Because I think if you take, we've tried to beat quite heavily, and I think that's where Claude is actually coming from, to push the mining industry from a compliance perspective to really take the social element heavily into consideration. Has it yielded the success on the metrics that would matter? So unemployment as one of those things, GDP growth as another. It hasn't. So the question then comes back to, well, you probably need to think of both of them, not either or. I would say that you have to take the social mandate into consideration because we don't start from a zero basis here in South Africa. We have big socioeconomic issues that we cannot ignore. So whatever the solution is, it has to still have economic value add. It still has to have a business case. It still has to work considering the social impact, but not the other way around.
I wanted to put a question to Roger, but he wants to come in on this point.
So Bernard, a quick input there, which is to say, mining companies have been, if we didn't deliberately address a number of the social transformation issues that we inherited, say 30 years ago, and start the process, we wouldn't have a mining industry today from a social confidence perspective in the industry itself. So transformative change that's taken place has been quite remarkable. It's in our interest to work with our communities and our suppliers and others because having a social license to operate is not mutually exclusive. You can't have one without the other. You either work with your communities and with society and create a social license to work and pursue profit at the same time. Otherwise, you can't pursue profit. You can't just pursue profit by itself. Otherwise, you won't have social license to operate.
I want to, there's a comment here which tells me, Claude, perhaps people are struggling with your accent.
I'll try to make it more French, maybe it will help.
That one, yeah. Because somebody says we're addressing the wrong issue. We should focus on sustainable job creation, and if beneficiation helps, we proceed. If not, we don't. I thought that was your point.
Yeah, that's my point.
So I want to take another suggestion. I want to give you 1 minute, and you, the mega mining minister, how do we grow the mining industry? No, let's start with the guy who respects 1 minute, and then I'll get to you two.
So that gives us more time, you see.
It's 60 seconds, 1 minute. Just work through that. Whilst,
Well, exploration. I think we have to start with growing the industry. It's a long-term investment. There's a lot of enablers that we have already spoken about in the past panel, so I'm not going to repeat those. But if we don't start there, I think we still have a challenge. And I think collaboration. I think we need to figure out the vehicle for it.
So you believe more in collaboration than the industry participants. That's interesting.
It hasn't worked thus far. If you don't collaborate, I think we're going to struggle.
Roger, can I come to you?
My view is
1
very,
minute
my,
version.
my view is very simple. We've got a very well-established industrial base in mining with a lot of expertise, a lot of capability. Unlock that capability, focus on the basics. A lot of that is starting to happen in energy, infrastructure, and others. In the actual mining space itself, there is a focus on introducing a proper cadastral system. Hey presto, it's almost there. Shortening licensing times, making it simpler, focusing on how the business models of junior miners work, for example, to enable them to prosper in South Africa and unlock their capability is really key. And yes, I do believe that the idea around collaboration solves a lot more than contestation. And from a policy perspective, stable, predictable law is what makes a country competitive.
I mean, the whole day, that seems to be the underpin of the people who outcompete us, gets that right. Claude, mega mining minister, you would love that.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can have blue lights and armed guards, and what would you do?
Yeah,
What's your
very, very big armed cars.
What would you do?
I would change the MPRDA to make it a lot more attractive. I would reform the legislation. I would fight corruption, official, public, and private sector. And I would allow miners to mine, and I would hold them to account on safety, environment, water, and I would incentivize them to invest in infrastructure in the communities so that those investment in infrastructure would allow them to operate profitably. And whether they invest themselves or whether they have partners who bring capital and expertise, that's probably what they would do. If they so decide that they have a case for beneficiating, I would let them. I wouldn't stop them beneficiating. I would do away with any conversation of import taxes, export taxes, export quotas and restrictions. And I would regulate an industry to its growth and so that it can pay a lot of taxes, which would then give to the Minister of Finance.
I never thought I would agree with Claude. I like this concept of, if I was the minister, I would allow the mining industry to beneficiate. Just think that through. It's a different approach, huh? Because if it made sense, shouldn't we be doing it? So allow us to beneficiate. Don't tell us to beneficiate. Claude, you sometimes say profound things without obviously understanding it. Ladies, gentlemen, this was always going to be a panel that went many places.